The Masters, a family's legacy. In conversation with Bobby Jones' grandson, Dr. Bob Jones IV.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Bob.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you, Fred. Thank you so much for doing this again. Most people, after they do it with me once, they're kind of like, okay, that's it. We're done.
Really? Why? You're such a wealth of information and so chatty. I love that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
We kind of work well together on that, I think.
We do.
Exciting time of year. The golf season seems to be kicking off, and that must mean one thing, that the Masters is on its way.
No doubt.
It's for me, it's always been, opening day of baseball season. But baseball is, there's a lot of people losing interest in baseball, and they didn't make it any easier this year with the owner lockout. And so it just makes the Masters that much more important. Plus, we've had, through COVID, there's been some strange times, and, we got to see a Masters at the wrong time of year. But now it's really a rebirth.
Oh, no doubt. No question. And, the thing, though, that's most interesting, and I think this is what sets the Masters apart from just about any other event. When you have opening day in baseball, you have it at basically, 16 parks around the country. When you have the Masters, though, you have this one gathering at the same place, normally at the same time every year. And not only that, but people from the entire world of golf gather together at this event. And these are people, and people will see each other who haven't seen each other since the last iteration. And so there is a certain, I think there's a certain feel to that week of the Masters that is, that you just don't find in any other sporting event really in the world. Everything from that first day you get there early in the week, and the grounds are just pristine. And later in the week, the walkways have started to brown out a little bit, but yet the excitement and the greens have slicked up because the wind has blown across them. And yet, the excitement still continues just to build and build. And it goes from early in the week when you're reconnecting with old friends to later in the week when the tension is starting to form as to who is going to be the champion. There's just no experience like it in golf.
It's interesting that you talk about connecting with old friends. What makes the Masters so special is the fact that it's in the same location every year, where the other majors rotate around and introduce us to new golf courses that we've yet to see. But the fact that it comes back and it's the beginning of the year. People are thawing out after being locked in all winter long, and it's the beginning of, hey, it's spring and I'm sneezing. This is great. But it's like my nose is plugged up. And
oh yes. Well, and I tell you, you get over there and you stand at the top of the hill and you can just watch clouds of pollen just blow across the golf course.
How is it that you don't have people sneezing during somebody's backswing all the time? It's like,
because they're scared to death that if they do, they might lose their credentials.
But it is a unique group of people. It's also a very specific group of people. It's not like anybody can come to watch this event.
No, that's true. And one of the things that I think has changed over the years is that the average patron of the Masters has gone from being somebody who just comes year in and year out to having a bit more, I would say, of a corporate flair to it.
Oh, sure.
But yet there are still so many people that have come there just because, well, that's just what they've always done. I'll give you an idea of what I mean. The United States Golf Association sends representatives. The PGA of America sends representatives. The Royal and Ancient Golf Club sends representatives. Every major golf organization in the world has representatives that come to Augusta to the Masters. Many of them serve on committees during the tournament. And, especially for some of the international folks, this is really the only time of the year that we all get to see each other. I've had people that I've known now for, well, let's see, I'm going to be 65 in June. And there are people that I've probably known just through the association with Augusta for 40 years. And the only time we see each other is during the first full week of April. And there is no experience like it. I suppose if you were a NASCAR fan, perhaps Daytona.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
that's done in, 3.5 hours?
Right. We get the whole weekend here. It's almost like a corporate convention. Are there meetings that go on with all these different golf organizations? Do they have scheduled meetings and conversations?
There are. And I mean, for example, the Golf Writers Association of America, every Wednesday of Masters Week has a major banquet, where they give out all their awards for the year. And this is going to be the first year in probably about 7 or 8 years that I've not been, well, of course, with the exception of the last 2 when nothing happened. But this will be the first time in about 7 or 8 seasons that I've not been able to attend the Golf Writers dinner. And I really miss that because the Golf Writers are an interesting group of people. But why can't there are all sorts of groups. Oh, I've got to. It's that stupid thing called work, Fred.
Come on!
I got to work.
Oh, wait, but this is part of your work. This is your community service.
Well, it sort of is, but this year, because of some things that are happening in my schedule over the next few weeks, I can't get away until my wife and I are going to go over on Friday morning, and we're going to stay pretty much all day Friday and all day Saturday, and then come back to Atlanta Saturday night.
Yeah, but you will be able to attend and watch some golf.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Don't miss it.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, no. Oh no. Probably I will go attend the Masters, even if I have to be pushed around. Even if I have to go around on a walker, I will still manage to get to the Masters. So,
well, if you ever, God forbid, you have to be in a wheelchair, I'm happy to push for you.
I'll count you in, Fred. Appreciate it.
It's interesting. You talk about the corporate event. I'm sure that of all these golf organizations that show up, that you also have, there's major sponsors, Mercedes-Benz and Rolex and these major IBM that are probably sending large contingents of people as well. My son, who's in, let's say, the real estate business, I'll keep it generic, but he's on a national scale, and he gets treated to a lot of very nice golf. I mean, he was actually picked up in a private jet this past week and went and played golf at a high-end course in California, and then flew to Vegas and did it again. But he said to me recently, what do you think the odds are that because he always wants to bet me on something, what do you think the odds are that I'm going to get to go to the Masters? And I said, 1%, maybe. And he goes, want to put some money on that? So he's like, no, I'm going. This year he's going. He's being taken to the Kentucky Derby, and he is convinced that he is going to get a chance to go play, to go watch at the Masters. And it's like, there's a lot of corporate perks.
There are, but here's one of the things that's interesting about that. You go to most tournaments and you go to the 18th green and you see basically a small city that's constructed around the 18th green, right, with these big stands and hospitality suites and everything. And Augusta National has those as well. But the difference is they are basically hidden out of view. They're hidden out of view. Like there's a big suite of buildings up the side of the number 1 fairway that you could walk right by them. And in fact, I'm sure a lot of people do. They walk right by them and never even know they're there. And, and then there are places across the street that are hospitality centers. And so the corporate stuff is there, but it is definitely out of sight of the public. Not so much because I don't think it's because people are, like saying, oh, we just want to pretend that's not going on. I don't think that's it at all. I think what they want to do, and I think what Augusta National does, or the Masters tournament does very, very well, is they really protect the image of the game, or at least of the game that they are trying to present in that first full week of April. And it's very funny. Even the buildings that are out of sight, just to the right of the first fairway, when you walk behind the hedgerow and you see them, they look like they are in absolute keeping with the clubhouse and with all the other buildings. It's not like they're just these shacks that get thrown up.
Oh, yeah.
Everything maintains that very consistent Masters feeling. And I don't know of a sporting event anywhere that really gives quite the same level of thought to the experience of the average patron from the time they, get to their parking and they cross underneath this bridge, they cross underneath the old Berkman's Road, and they come up on the other side, and then bang, there they are at the Masters. And as they're entering in, they're walking along the side, the side of the driving range, past the new press center. And everything is just eye-poppingly beautiful. And you haven't even gotten to Patrons Pavilion, and you haven't even gotten to the first tee, and already you are just hit with the magnitude of the place and the beauty of the event.
We're going to talk more about that with Dr. Bob Jones IV. Have we not mentioned that this is Bobby Jones' grandson? We've got a lot of family discussion to go on, and we're going to do that when we come back right after this. There's a couple of elements that you just mentioned in your last comment that I wrote down that all can be picked apart. And I'm trying to figure out, well, one of the things I would say is, as inconspicuous as those buildings are, I'm sure that the merchandising tent is not inconspicuous. Everyone knows that when you go to the Masters, you better bring a credit card with a lot of credit. Because it's the only time and the only place you can buy these goodies, right?
Yes. In fact, I think if you go and look in the archives of the golf magazines, you'll see some articles on the new merchandising facility at the Masters, and Patrons Pavilion is what it's called. And there's like places where you can get the ubiquitous pimento cheese sandwich. Although I must say, I'm an egg salad guy myself.
Okay.
The egg salad. And the egg salad at the Masters is so good that I had 2 of them one year, and I was walking around the bleachers by 14T, and my wife's with me, and all of a sudden I started getting frantic after my 2 egg salads. And she said, well, what is it? What is it? I said, honey, I can't find my sunglasses. And we've got everybody around looking for my sunglasses. And finally, she said to me, wait a minute, honey, you can't find your sunglasses. I said, no, I can't. She goes, you mean the ones that you're wearing right now? And I said, oh, yes, I am. Oh, thank God. I was so worried. And she said, you're done with egg salad for this year. You are totally cut off on egg salad.
All right. So, the only guy I've ever met who's hallucinated on egg salads.
That's how good that egg salad is. You will forget your sunglasses on egg salad at Augusta.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, part of the design of these buildings and being inconspicuous and not being shown, I'm sure that a tremendous amount of energy and time is spent on making sure that visually on television, they also disappear.
Absolutely. They're there, but they're not. I mean, if you think about it, have you ever seen a clubhouse as understated as Augusta National's? I mean, it's very beautiful. It's elegant. It's the oldest poured concrete structure in the entire state of Georgia.
Wow.
But and it's iconic. But have you ever seen a more understated clubhouse at a golf course of that stature in the world?
No, they want to showcase these clubhouses.
Yes, and I mean, and that's the funniest part, because if you stop and think about it, the original plan was to raise it and to build a clubhouse that was of grander stature, right?
Sure.
More appropriate stature. And the funniest part about it, Fred, is if they had done that, if they had made a lot of the changes they thought about doing at the very beginning, doing a women's golf course and doing all this other stuff, right? A lot of the things that make Augusta such a unique place, such an iconic place, might well have been lost. And we might view the Masters to this day not as the first of four major championships, and in many ways the crown jewel of the four, but we might view it somewhere along the line as we view those second tier championships that are right below the majors. Good, important, but not quite at that top level. And in some ways, a friend of mine the other day made the observation that Ken Venturi said, I think it was something that fate sometimes bends the twig.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of true in a way here. In some ways, a lot of what was done when Augusta National was founded was done simply because the budget was tight, because they were in the bowels of the Depression. But
Oh.
what they never realized was that because they were limited by what they could do at the very beginning, because they were limited that way, what actually was an obstacle in the early days now is part of what makes the place so unique and so almost outside of time, now that we are almost 100 years past its founding.
Hmm.
And that's why you just don't find any place that is like Augusta National anywhere. But it was born out of obstacle.
Interesting. And again, you don't think about the clubhouse. The beauty of this is you think about the golf course. And there's
Oh,
so
no
many
question.
there's so many places on the golf course that just immediately come to mind. What are your favorite spots on the golf course when you get to walk through it?
Uh, my favorite spot after walking through it is a chair, but because it's very hilly and difficult. But I've got some favorite
Which you
spots.
don't get on television, except when they played with no crowds there. It was the first time that I recognized
Yes,
the hills. That was
no
amazing to
question.
me.
No question. Uh, I have some favorite spots. One of the things I always tell people, if you've never been to Augusta, the first thing you need to do is get on the property as soon as the gate opens and go down to Amen Corner before any players are even there, and just walk from 11 down and look at 12 and then walk up 13. And that is because you want to see that before the action starts. And you want to see it while it's quiet. And while you can hear the birds, and you can really take in the foliage and what's blooming at that time. And I always say that's where a first person coming to Augusta for the first time really needs to see. My favorite spots on the golf course are actually a little bit different. My favorite hole on the golf course always has been number 5. I've always thought, I don't think it's quite as strategically interesting now that they've lengthened it out, but I still think it's one of the most strategically interesting golf holes on the course. And I love going out there. Not coincidentally, it was also my father's favorite hole. And not so coincidentally, one of my grandfather's as well. I think 5 is really one of my favorite places. The hole that I like to go, though, and watch the most, I love to watch number 14. 14 is almost the redheaded stepchild of Augusta National. I mean, think about it. It's uphill. The fairway slopes pretty sharply from left to right. You've got no bunkers on the entire hole. Not one.
Wow.
And yet it is one of the most strategically interesting and dramatic holes on the entire golf course. It has spots on it on some of those plateaus where a putt will look dead flat and it'll break 3 inches in one direction or another. Or more crazily, you'll be standing there over a putt that looks like it's going 3 inches to the right. And so you stroke it that way and the putt breaks 1 inch to the left. And your caddy has told you that. You know that because you've watched the Masters forever and you've seen that same thing. But because of the brilliance of how that hole is designed, you can't force yourself to hit what you know is going to be required. That's one of my favorite places to be.
What is one of your
Absolutely.
favorite memories witnessing on the course during the Masters? Do you have something that stands out that you remember?
I do, and it was totally inconsequential to the resolution of a particular tournament.
Really?
But I remember one of the last years, I don't remember what year it was, but it was one of the last years that Arnold Palmer played in the Masters. I mean, as a contestant. And he was in the second round. I forget what what he was shooting because, I mean, he was going to miss the cut by a mile. But I caught up to him on the 15th tee. And Arnold used to have this gift of being able to look in the gallery, and everybody in that gallery would just swear on a Bible that he had been looking directly at them.
Wow.
It was incredible. Nobody else could do that. And Arnold hits his tee shot down to the left center of the fairway. And this is when the fairway, where you could still really go for it. Those trees didn't quite impinge like they do now on the left. And he's standing at the top of the hill. He's got about 215, 220 yards into the green. And there are only about 50 of us following him, right? And he's standing there. He's got his hands on his hips, and he's looking down at the hill. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there watching him, and it's like, oh, my God, he's debating if he's going to go for it, right? Now, during this generation, people are playing that golf hole in driver 7-iron, right? Driver 6-iron. Arnold's standing up there. Am I going to go for it? In other words, am I going to take that 3-wood and go for it? And Arnold standing there staring it down, and all of a sudden he hitched his pants up like he used to do back in the, when he'd grab his belt and kind of just give him a little hitch to kind of trigger himself to say, okay, I'm going into play mode now. And he reaches over with real drama and he takes the head cover off his fairway wood. And everybody in that gallery, I just sort of took a quick look around, everybody there, and we were all just like mesmerized by this, because this is the part that I think makes the Masters different from anywhere else. All of a sudden, to me and to everybody standing there, it was 1960 all over again.
Wow.
And Arnie's going to go for it. And I mean, you could have heard a pin drop. And he took that 3-wood out on grass. He took that on grass, yes. He took that 3-wood out, cracked that thing, and the ball rises up in the air, lands on the very front of the green, and releases like 25 feet from the hole. And everybody, all 50 of us, just go crazy. And, and of course, he's like waving and, of course, staring at everybody individually in the gallery, of course, or it seemed like it. And as he went down to the green, for all of us, it was like we had been transported back 50 years in history. Now, you name for me another tournament where something like that can happen, because I don't think there is one. Now, the fact that he 3-putted the hole and made par, hey, who cares? The important thing was for that brief moment, it was 1960 all over again, and Arnie was going for his second green jacket, instead of being the last hurrah of one of golf's greatest ambassadors. No place else on earth can that happen except at the Masters.
Phenomenal. And, you really exposed yourself as golf royalty, because every person I've ever had a conversation with about Arnold Palmer has referred to him as Mr. Palmer, but you called him Arnold. We'll be back right after this. You made a reference earlier to the Masters tournament and as opposed to Augusta National Golf Course. Are they two separate entities in the world of Georgia?
Yeah.
And the world
Well,
of
actually,
golf?
they legally are.
Oh,
There's Augusta National Inc. There's Masters Tournament Inc. At least I think that's right.
okay.
I mean, I am a psychologist, not a lawyer, but I do believe they are separate entities because I'll tell you what's very, very interesting is when you're at Augusta National, and I'm not a member there, but like when I've been blessed to be a guest there, one of the things that's really fascinating, everything that's there about Patrons Pavilion and tournament headquarters and that driving range, there's just this big fence that they're able just to draw right across that. And when you're there outside of tournament time, you have no idea that even exists. So they are, if they are not in law separate, they are definitely separate in the experience of the organization.
And they
Even
probably
though
are
one really
in-laws.
strongly depends on the other. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So they are in-laws in that sense.
Oh, very definitely. Very
In-law,
definitely.
in-laws. So let's talk about the family legacy of Augusta National and what this time of year means to not just Dr. Bob Jones IV, but to the entire Jones family itself and all the descendants of the great Bobby Jones. What does this time of year mean for the family?
Do you know, Fred, that's a very, very difficult thing to put into words. But having something of a big ego, I'm certainly going to give it a try. We absolutely love the Masters tournament. Actually, for what it is right now, just on its own, you know? But we also love it because every year when the tournament is played, our grandfather and now our great-grandfather, for some of us, our great-grandfather comes alive again. And the things which he did that were really amazing, to use which is almost too trivial a word, those things come back to life again. The values that he held of integrity and sportsmanship and friendship and competition all come back to life again. And the nice thing is for me, as I now am in my mid-60s, is that the consoling thing is long after I'm gone, right? Long after I'm gone, and I'm the last generation that knew him.
Right.
But long after I'm done and gone, those values will still come alive each and every first full week of April. And you get a little bit of a taste of that again in August at the end of the tour season when the Tour Championship comes back to Eastlake, where Bobby learned to play. And so, it's very funny. But even as good as that is, the Masters is almost the hallmark of everything that my grandfather stood for, good in good ways. And I even make that point. No golf course has ever been modified to the extent that Augusta National has. It has been tweaked and changed and redone and rebuilt almost every year since it opened in 1933, right? And yet, the essential character of the golf course, the essential test to the player, remains the same now as it was then. Now, how is that possible? It is possible because that was the mind of Bobby Jones. And that was the influence of Bobby Jones. That even after all that change, the characteristic stays the same. I just don't know any other place that does that either.
Does
so
the
that's
family
that's the legacy.
Yeah, do family members get together at this time of year and share stories, or are there regular Jones family reunions to celebrate the
We don't
Masters?
get together as much as we would probably like.
Yeah.
We've got one family member now in our generation that's gone now.
I'm sorry.
And we do try to at least touch base during the tournament. But we've got a couple of folks now that are getting older and they can't really make the trip anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And but there will be a few of us, and we'll see each other, and we'll talk. And oftentimes it's not really sharing memories; it's more just catching up. How you doing? What have you been up to?
Right.
But the fact that we're doing it where we're doing it does make a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah, I would think so. Is that pressure on the family? Are there members of the family that it's just hard to deal with this? It's too much? And I don't mean to, please don't answer that if it's
you're talking
too
to
personal.
you're talking to one who used to be that way.
Uh-huh.
It used to be very difficult for me to attend the Masters because see, here's the thing. I'm the only member of the family that carries the name Robert Tyre Jones.
Right.
And so there's a certain anonymity that you can hide behind if your name is anything but. But when your name is Bob Jones IV, I was always raised by my family, and I think I said this to you when we talked the last time. I was always raised by my family to always assume that somebody is watching everything you're doing when you're there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was in my mid-40s that I finally realized, you know what? I need to get over this because I'm the last generation. And if I don't tell his story, I'm leaving it to be told by somebody else. And besides, I may not be the greatest guy in the world, but I'm not a jerk. So, just get out there, be nice to people, treat people the way you would want to be treated. Recognize, as my grandfather said, that sometimes it's the big people in the world that are really small and the little people in the world that are really big, and just go and just experience the place. And since I've been in my mid-40s, that's pretty much what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been able to quite shed the sense that, though, but always be on your good behavior and treat somebody really nice because you never know who's looking.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we did discuss that last time, because that's when I'm like, you see, you are golf royalty. Right? Because you do have that pressure. And again, if I'm so bold to ask, and please tell me to shut up if it's a problem, but is there a Bob Jones V?
No.
Okay.
I've had 5 adopted children, and none of them obviously are Robert Joneses. In fact, just yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the loss of the burial of my oldest adopted son, Michael.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And thank you. He was a really great man, and I thoroughly enjoyed the time I got to spend with him in Augusta. So,
well, I appreciate you.
There again, there's the memory, right?
Yeah.
There's the memory.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you spending time with me
place.
today during a difficult time, because grief lasts, and it sneaks up on you. Even if it's been around a long time, it can sneak up at you at any time. So I'm really...
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fred.
Of course. Let's take another time out. We'll be back.
I can honestly tell you that when my article came out in Golf Illustrated, I got a lot of emails from people that bought their book and bought their tapes and said, I can't do this, it hurts my back, but when I tried your method, I could hit the ball. Now, does that mean I'm right? No, it just means that some people think that my method is easier. I do know one thing. Ben Hogan rotated through the golf ball. He didn't tilt. He was what we call posted straight up and down when he hit a golf ball. He did not tilt back. His chest was left of the target, and he was always in perfect balance.
Do you have stories that your grandfather shared with you about the beginnings of Augusta National and the Masters? Do you remember him sharing things about it?
No, he would not talk about things like that very often at all. Now, partially that was because of his illness. Right. He was, so debilitated by that syringomyelia that he found the best way to approach that was the same way he approached championship golf, which meant that he focused on, you play the ball, you play the ball as it lies, right? You play one shot at a time.
Exactly.
And you only play the shot that's right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And as he also always would say, and he said, never forget this. He said, if you shoot lower than anybody else and you don't cheat, they pretty much have to give you the trophy. And that's true. But as a result of that, he was not one of those that was particularly fond of talking about his past exploits, either in golf championships or in the foundation and formation of Augusta National Golf Club. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't learned about it, because, of course, I knew the late Charlie Price real well, who was a very great golf writer, a dear friend of my grandfather's, edited most of his books, and wrote probably the most compelling history of Augusta National, called A Golf Story. And so I spent time with Charlie, and so I learned an awful lot about the formation of the club from him. Mm-hmm. One of the funniest things that Price told me, though, and this sort of goes to your question, one time Charlie was with my grandfather at lunch in the Jones cabin, and a couple of former champions came by, and they were going into war stories about the great old days and the shots they played here and there. And Bub was eating his cheeseburger without a bun and drinking his martini. And after about 20 minutes of this conversation, he turned to these guys and he said, well, boys, I appreciate you coming by. It's really, really important to see each other. Glad you could be here. But now I hate to do this, but I got to run you out because Charlie and I have some business to discuss. So out they went. And Bub's just sitting there eating his cheeseburger, drinking his martini. Actually, he had a straw to drink it because he couldn't hold it. And Charlie's just sitting there. And finally, after about 3 minutes, he goes, well, Bob, what do we have to discuss? And Bub just looked at him and said, oh, nothing, Charlie. I just didn't want to chew the fat on all that old stuff any more than I had to.
It's a good way to get rid of people. But that
goes to the point. Yeah, but I mean, that goes to the point, doesn't it? That here's a guy who's got all of this history, this treasure trove of stuff, right? I mean, if he wanted to share war stories, who's going to share war stories like Bob Jones?
Right.
And yet, that's not what he was about. He was about the kind of thing. Herbert Warren Wind and Pat Ward Thomas, two of the greatest golf writers of the latter half of the 20th century, used to come and visit my grandfather in the Jones cabin, and they'd sit and have a couple of drinks with him in the evening, and they'd have chats and conversations. And Herb said to me once, he said, the most amazing thing about your grandfather was here was this man who could not even use his body, who was withered compared to what he was in his peak. And he said, and Pat and I, when we would leave the cabin after spending time with your grandfather, would realize that we had totally forgotten that this man was, for all intents and purposes, an invalid. Mm. And that he said, and we had ended up talking more about ourselves than about him. He said it was an amazing gift that he had. And I think that sort of goes with the piece. I mean, did he want to tell the story about how Augusta National got founded? No, he would say Charlie Price can do that. Steve Eubanks can do that. David Owen can do that. What he was more concerned with was who was the person that was sitting right in front of him. It was a really remarkable thing.
Amazing.
He was a much more interactional person than a transactional one.
And that's probably something that you have in your genes as well. I have that sense.
Well, if not, I certainly am trained that way.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, actually, that's actually quite true. Yeah, I'm much more interactional than I am transactional.
Oh yeah, I get that sense. Just even looking through video chat with you, it's a very deep connection that I feel with you every time, both times that we've had the opportunity to speak, and I'm just honored to spend this time with you. Now, I'm going to ask you about a couple. Oh, thank you. I'm going to ask you a couple things that, I know you're not going to be able to answer as Bobby Jones, Bub, but you can channel it for me because it's going to be your response, but I'm just curious of what he would have thought about Tiger Woods.
I think, like everybody else in the entire game of golf, he would have been absolutely astounded by what Tiger was able to accomplish on the golf course. I mean, he said of Jack Nicklaus in the 1960s, he said, Jack plays a game with which I am not familiar.
Wow.
And I think the same could be said certainly of Tiger. I think if my grandfather had looked at the things that Tiger had to do to achieve that, he would have seen the warning signs of what came down the road when in some of those very difficult years that Tiger faced. And I think he would have felt a certain amount of sympathy and understanding, because my grandfather knew what it was like to play and maintain a sport at the absolute pinnacle for a certain period of time. But he would have had some sympathy, because I think he would have recognized that Tiger had to do it in a way my grandfather didn't. And that is, Tiger had to live in the fishbowl where every single thing he did was going to be scrutinized relentlessly. Tiger could not even get in the car and go to McDonald's if he wanted to without being swamped. My grandfather, on the other hand, lived in the day of print media. Until the golf films came out long after he retired, nobody had ever seen him in motion, right? And so that gave him a certain anonymity that Tiger did not have. And I think, knowing my grandfather, that nothing would have pleased him more than to see the rebirth of Tiger, so to speak, at the Tour Championship in 2018 and the Masters the following spring. I mean, if you had to put a coda on something, that's a coda of a great career. Even if Tiger does nothing else, the fact that 2018 and 2019 happened really, I think, put the capstone on an outstanding career, but also showed a real maturity and a coming of age emotionally for him. And I think my grandfather would have been pleased by that. But I'll check my Ouija board later in the day.
No, you're doing a good job channeling himself. All right. How about what his thoughts would have been about a competitive league? There's a lot of conversation about this league being started now by Greg Norman and backed by Saudi Arabian money. And how would he feel? Because at the time, I guess he had the USGA and the RNA, or did he even have that to do?
And the PGA Tour.
And the PGA Tour.
Or they called it the Tournament Players Division.
Okay.
I don't know that he would even wade into that conversation. Mm-hmm. Bub was very practical. His focus when he played was on championships. And everything that he did was geared towards championships, which in his case meant the United States Amateur, the United States Open, the British Amateur, and the British Open. Everything else was very, very secondary. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that that's something he would really wade into. Mm-hmm. He would probably would.
If he was around today, he would be asked.
I will tell you this. Bub was a fiercely patriotic man. Mm-hmm. He loved his country very, very much, and he loved things that were quintessentially American. He loved baseball. He loved football. He loved boxing. Loved fishing and hunting. And most of all, he loved the game of golf, and he loved the place of America in the game of golf. And so it's hard to say what his attitude would have been concerning all of this. It's really hard to guess, but I don't know. I think his first allegiance would still have to be, gosh, what about the game of golf in this country? And I think so. I mean, that's just, but you know what? He may have had more, I hope he would have had more time to think about it than I did. But I think that's what he would say. And to be honest, I kind of feel the same way.
Sure. But, as we're going to hear in a couple weeks, let's not forget that golf didn't start here in the United States. It took a while for a native-born American to win the first time.
Well, that is true. And, you could make, that is correct. And, you make a really good point. And I'm not channeling Bob on this one, but, isn't it interesting? Golf started in Scotland and Europe, comes over to the United States, and now it has become much more known as an American game. And yet now it's making a move into the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula. Now you can read that through an American, an Anglo-chauvinistic sort of mindset. Or you can also recognize that when you look at the growth of the game in Latin America and the growth of the game in Asia, that this is just a logical extension of golf becoming a world game. You can certainly make that case.
It's definitely a global game. And that leads me to the third point that I was going to ask you about for what his thoughts might have been. And that would have been last year's winner of the Masters, which was Hideki Matsuyama, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not a great...
Oh, you're not mistaken.
Right.
Not mistaken.
And I have to say the closing moment with his caddy, and you can take it from here, please.
Oh, I mean, what more could you possibly say than Matsuyama winning the tournament and his caddy bowing in homage and thanks to the golf course? I mean, what a moment. How would you not be thrilled with that? And, very strangely, for somebody that was very, very patriotic. Oh, yeah. And for somebody that was as patriotic as my grandfather, and somebody that was, fought in World War II.
Yeah.
Bob absolutely loved the Japanese people.
Really?
And in fact, yes. And I'll tell you something interesting. All of his books were published in Japan. And I'll tell you something fascinating about that. In every book that was published in Japan, when they would do the photograph sections, they would airbrush his eyes to make them Eastern.
Wow.
Now, what's that mean? When the Japanese do that, what they are saying is, this man is one of us. This man embodies the values and the ideals that we want to embody. He's one of us. So how would he have felt about Hideki Matsuyama winning and winning very graciously, and then his caddy doing what he did? What Bub would have said probably was the same thing you and I said. This is what the tournament is all about. This is it.
Yeah. Final question.
Sure.
Which was his favorite baseball team?
Well, minor league, I know he absolutely had loved the Atlanta Crackers. He served on the board of the Atlanta Crackers forever. And then, of course, after the mid-1960s, I don't need to tell you who became his favorite team.
The Atlanta Braves. And
the Atlanta Braves.
And
that's
Henry
exactly
Aaron.
right.
Yep. Hammer and Hank.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Bob, it was a joy, a treat, an honor to spend this time with you. All I can say is enjoy the Masters this year.
Thank you, Fred. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the day when we can get together and do one of these in person.
Oh boy, me too. Thank you.
Okay. All right.